Welcome to the Shootin' Show. Stand by for shots fired. Hello, I'm Johnny Rowland, your host of the Shootin' Show, and welcome again to this week's program. No, I'm not wearing eye protection. I do not have my earplugs in. I am holding our Colt Sporter, but we're not going to shoot today. We're indoors. We're in the middle of a monsoon here in northwest Louisiana, so we're not going to be shooting it, certainly at the beginning of the show. We do have a great show for you. Let me remind you, folks, I'm holding this Colt Sporter because there are people in Washington and on some local levels that really want to take these guns away from us, the honest citizen. So we've got to contact our congressmen. We've got to contact our senators. Kurt and I were talking the other day about some of the things we're going to be doing with the Shootin' Show Gun Club, because you know what, friends, if enough of us join the Shootin' Show Gun Club, we can do something about this, because we're going to be putting on fun gun days. We've already talked to a number of gun clubs about sponsoring our programs out all around the country. You know, friends, it's so important because we've got to reach middle America. We've got to reach those people that may or may not have an opinion upon or about firearms. You know, someone called in the other day and was commenting on weapons of mass destruction, and I assumed that he was thinking of one of these AR-15 type guns or an AK or an SK as a weapon of mass destruction. That's just not so. A weapon of mass destruction is something like a nuclear bomb or something along that line, a tank or an anti-tank missile. I would call that mass destruction. These semi-automatic guns have been around since around the turn of the century. See, friends, when our society was better, when our moral structure in our society was better, guns were not a problem. And even today, they're still not a problem. The problem is a breakdown of morality in our country. And that's where the trouble comes. We've had a breakdown in the justice system, all sorts of things about our moral structure from the government all the way down through the school system has totally gone awry. We've got to do something about it. And you can join the Shootin' Show Gun Club, and friends, we're going to do something about it, because we're going to educate all these millions of people out here that need to be educated about firearms. You know, friends, these semi-automatic rifles like this are one of the least used weapons in all crimes. And this is something that is so portrayed by the common media, and this is something we need to talk about. We're going to be having a piece on the program today literally exploding the myth of assault-type weapons, because what they're telling us out of Washington, the anti-gun people, is flatly not true. So we're going to be talking about that today. Anyway, well, let's get started with another Shootin' Show. Let's get started. Let's let another Shootin' Show begin. Well, since that was so much fun, well, friends, the next gun we're going to look at today is maybe one of the most standard hunting rifles, certainly in the United States, maybe even in the entire world, because it is such a great combination. This is the terrific Remington Model 700 in 30-06 chambering. It's bolt action, of course. It holds 4 rounds in the magazine, and the floor plate on the magazine detaches. If you load your magazine, all you have to do, and you want to take the cartridges out, you don't have to run them through the action on your gun. All you have to do is push the little button there in the trigger guard, and the floor plate will drop out. Of course, you can unload the cartridges like that. This is I say, one of the most common guns. One, it's such a good shooter. As they come across the gun store counter or from the factory, the Remington 700s are probably about as accurate a shooter as a standard gun as can be found. You can pay more money for a gun. There are other good guns, but nothing, to my knowledge, and most of the people that I talk with and shoot with, the Remington 700 is pretty much the high watermark on how the other sporting rifles are measured. A lot of times people say, well, this is a good gun, so it'll shoot as good as a Remington Model 700, and it's really true. This particular gun in the 30-06 chambering is a caliber that you can just about hunt everything in North America now. Some of those folks would say, well, I wouldn't want to go after a big bear and, with a 30-06. Well, I probably wouldn't either. I'd want something like a 338, but or certainly a 300 minimum, a 300 Magnum. But the 30-06 has done it in the past, and with the right bullets and the right load can still be called on for just about anything on the North American continent. As we were talking about a moment ago, I don't think that I would want to go after the big bears with a 30-06, but with proper shot placement, there's not much 30-06 won't do. In fact, a large number of elephants in years past had fallen to the 30-06 cartridge, and some even smaller than that. No, it is not an elephant cartridge. It is not what, certainly not. But it is probably the single most all-around cartridge. It'll do almost anything pretty darn well, within its limitations, of course. The 30-06 comes from 30 caliber, 1906. This was a standardized U.S. military caliber. It was standardized with a 150 grain bullet, and it was a tremendous development along about that time. It was, for many years, the most powerful military or martial type cartridge that was standard equipment for military forces pretty much anywhere in the world. There were a couple of other calibers that would approach the 30-06, but to my knowledge now, and I stand to be corrected, and if anybody out there has some facts on this, well, please give me a call or drop me a line. But to my knowledge, the 30-06 itself was the most powerful martial cartridge that was ever under general issue. Now, we're not talking about sniper guns, because the U.S. military has some sniper guns and .300 Winchester, and I'm sure some other countries do too. But as far as general issue caliber or cartridge, well, the 30-06 has a tremendous number of bullets that are available. You have all kinds of factory ammunition, Remington, Winchester, Federal, many others, but you also have such a bullet selection available. The Barnes X bullet is supposed to be really give the 30-06, in fact, it's supposed to bump up the effectiveness of the caliber, maybe up one caliber with this particular bullet. The great Swift A-frame, there's so many good bullets. A Spear, a Grand Slam, many good bullets available for it. You can hunt anything from mouse to moose with a 30-06. Well, what we have here today, this particular gun, the good folks at Britton's were nice enough to loan this one to us, and this has a 2 to 7 power Redfield scope. It's a wide view type scope, and seems to be real good. Well, we just got this gun a couple of days ago just for testing, and we cleaned it. I really don't know where it's going to shoot. I don't know when whoever put the scope on here, I don't know where they left it, or if it was just stuck on, I don't know. So we're about to find out. We're going to have a little exercise here in sighting our gun, just like it's the beginning of the season, which in fact is pretty close here in Louisiana to deer season. And these are really great deer cartridges. The recoil is certainly tolerable by most shooters. The 30-06 may be sort of the limit for a lot of people who are somewhat recoil sensitive. You definitely know it went off, but it's not going to hurt you. Here in Louisiana, the 180 grain bullet is very popular for deer, but you can certainly hunt them with the 150s, and today we're going to sight the gun in for the 165 grain. This is the Federal premium ammunition, a very fine load, one of the absolute best loads out there. And the good folks at Federal really have some spectacular premium ammunition. So what we're going to do, we have our target, and I'm standing about 20 yards away from our paper target. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to put some cartridges in the gun here, and we're going to shoot from here. So we'll know, at least we'll know we're on the paper, because just because you got a scope mount on your gun does not necessarily mean you're going to be on the paper. So what we'll do, we'll adjust the scope to get a reasonable pattern or reasonable spot on our paper target. And we're going to chronograph the loads immediately after we know, we won't know where it's going to shoot, so I won't shoot the chronograph, but to see what we're really doing. And we'll talk about adjusting our scope and about our point of aim or zero in just a few minutes. So let's go ahead and do that now. We have some PMC 150 grain military type cartridges here. So let's put about 3 of them in the gun. Now then, and be sure my hearing protection is in. And there's no need to have a rest or something at this range. Like I say, we just want to prove that the gun will print on paper. And when we get back to our 100-yard distance, well, then we're going to be real concerned about adjusting our scope. But for now, we're just certainly off the rest. For now, we're just going to shoot the gun and see where it hits on the paper. And I'll be aiming for the center dot on that target on the right. Okay, push our cartridge in and apply our safety. Now then, let's see. And plus, you'll get a look at recoil on my shoulder here. This particular gun does not have a recoil pad, so it's it's going to give my shoulder a little tap, I'll guarantee you. So let's see what happens. Get in position here, find it, our dot in our scope, and we'll got our safety off. All right, let's try one more. Okay, we found out that in fact our bullets were on the pretty much the center of the target, a little bit to the left of the dot I was aiming at, but that's no problem. At this range, at 20-25 yards, your bullet, if say with a 100-yard zero, your bullet's going to be 1.5 inches low anyway, because your scope, your line of sight here through your scope, is approximately 1.5 inches above the bore line. So now then, we've proven that it's on the paper target. Well, let's chronograph some loads that we have here today and see what they do.
Get ready to order the most exciting videotape ever offered on television. It's the best of guns, guns, guns. 60 minutes of action, excitement, and the most amazing display of firearms available on video. Pistols, rifles, shotguns, and machine guns. See Bob Munden, the fastest gun who ever lived. USPSA pistol competition, the Steel Challenge, U.S. Marine Corps weapons, machine guns from around the world, and lots of surprises. If you like guns, you'll love the best of guns, guns, guns. Available only through this special TV offer. Fast draw competition, hand cannon, soldier of fortune firepower, how to shoot fast, and lots more like you've never seen it before in this 60-minute action-packed video. Use your credit card to order toll-free now. Call 1-800-942-8273. You'll receive the best of guns, guns, guns for just $29.95 plus $4 shipping. By ordering now, you'll receive this 28-page gun video catalog absolutely free. So call with your credit card right now, 1-800-942-8273, or send check or money order to 7888 Ostro Street, Suite A, San Diego, California, 92111.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station. You know, friends, we're always talking about differences in guns. Well, it's true. Every last one of these guns will be a little different. Any mechanical device, when it's dependent upon tiny, tiny tolerances in the machining when they were actually made, they're all going to be just a hair different, even with the same ammunition. So let's see. We've got some of the military-type rounds in there. Let's see just, in fact, how fast they go from this gun with this 22-inch barrel. So let's take a look at it. Got our chronograph in place. Go ahead and load the gun, and we'll get in position to shoot through it. And we're going to adjust our scope back on 2 power, so it'll be a little easier to see up close. Here we go. And about. Okay, that one went 2,714 feet per second. All right, friends, let's try another one. See how consistent it is. 2769. Shoot one more. 27.54. So what we're seeing is real consistency in our load there, which was standard factory military type loading. Now then, friends, we're going to try some of the Federal Premium 165 grain bullets, and of course these ought to be tremendous long range bullets because they're boat tail, soft point, spire point. So these should really be good for out 200-300 yards. Of course 300 yards is a long shot. We read about where people make these 400 and 500 yard shots. Well, to tell you the truth, I'm not a good enough shot to do that. I might attempt a 300 yard shot, but most of the shots that the average person or average hunter is going to take is going to be less than 300 yards, most less than 100 yards for that matter, but we need to be prepared. If a game animal was getting away, say you shot him at 100 yards and missed or made a bad or poorly placed shot, well, you need to know that your gun can still hit something running even as far as 300 or so yards away. So we're going to be talking about that in just a minute. But let's go ahead and chronograph these Federal 165 grain loads and see what they do on the chronograph. Okay, 2701. And now, friends, let's run a couple more through there, and again to check our consistency. .2756, and again, being 50 or so feet per second difference is not bad. A lot of loads may vary as much as 100 or so feet per second difference, even between bullets, but we're not going to worry about a 50 feet per second difference. Let's go ahead and shoot one more. .2712, so that's not bad. Not bad consistency at all. Now then, friends, we have some 180 grain bullets, and let's see what kind of velocity variation we get. We shot the 150s, and of course then we shot the 165s, and I'm going to guess that the 180s are going to be running about 2,600 or so feet per second. I'm guessing now. We'll find out in just a moment. You know, a lot of people read the promotional material by some of the manufacturers, and sometimes the promotional materials are a little bit optimistic, or in some cases in recent years they've been a lot closer to the truth. But what a cartridge does in a test barrel in the factory is not the same thing as what it's going to do in your particular gun out in the field. So let's try these 180s and see what it does. And I'll remind you, put our safety on, when you're sighting a scope, don't get up and crowd that scope. You need to move it. You need to have enough eye relief on your scope where it's not going to hit you in the eyebrow. And trust me on this one, it hurts. In fact, it can gash your eyebrow if you're not real careful. So you want it to allow for, the scope's got to be far enough away from your eye to allow for recoil, because this gun is going to recoil when it fires. It's going to go somewhere. So you don't need it to knock yourself halfway out by letting the scope hit you above the eye. So you need to keep that in mind. So anyway, let's shoot our 180 grain bullets and see what happens. Well, 2596. I said about 2600. Sure enough, 2596. All right, friends, let's shoot it a couple more times again to check the consistency of the ammunition here. 2586, very close to certainly just 10 feet per second difference. Let's try one more. And 2581, which is real good. That's certainly within allowable limits.
Now, friends, for the absolute best in monthly shooting magazines, turn to Shooting Times. They have all sorts of excellent features on handguns, rifles, shotguns, and black powder by some of your favorite gun writers, such as Dick Metcalf and Rick Jameson and Bill Jordan, just to name a few. Each month, you'll find interesting articles on guns, shooting, reloading, and new products for the firearms industry, along with information on pending legislation of interest to all gun owners. For subscription information, call 1-800-727-4353. Shooting Times, the best there is.
Now then, friends, we know, one, that our gun is shooting on the paper within a reasonable distance of where we want to hit, and we've chronographed our loads. We know that our load is performing like we expect it to. So let's move back to the 100-yard range, and let's see what kind of groups it'll shoot. And of course, we're going to zero our scope. Now, friends, we have our gun in place. We're using our double sandbag rest, and you know, sandbags just don't cost that much. You can go down and, in fact, you can probably order them from us from the Little Express. I'm sure we can get them, and they're just not very expensive. You just have to fill them with sand, and they add so much to really precise shooting with a gun. Now, we've got our shells. We also have something else that's extremely important. We have a manual here that talks about, this is the Hornady Handbook of Cartridge Reloading, but what it has ballistics tables in this particular book. This is volume number 2. The first one is for loading, and this one can tell you what a particular weight bullet, certainly that Hornady makes, and in this case, they also make a 165 grain boat tail spire point, such as this Federal premium ammunition we're shooting today. So that's how we're going to zero our gun. Now, our targets down here are somewhat downhill from us, so we're going to have to allow at our 100-yard target, because trajectory will vary due to elevation. If you're shooting uphill or downhill, it will change your zero somewhat. So since we're shooting at 100 yards down here, and we've got a pretty good drop, we have I guess probably a 15 or so foot drop from our target. Instead of what I'm going to do is zero for 200 yards. Instead of 2 inches high at 100 yards, I'm going to stay at about 1 inch high on this particular range we're at now. So I think that will pretty much put me in the zone I want to be at 200 yards. And according to the book here, at 300 yards, we're only going to be about 7 or so inches low, using the table that I'm looking at here. Roughly 7 inches low, even at 300 yards, which would still put you well within the efficient zone to make a game animal expire. Now, you know, friends, you need to buy, I know a lot of hunters that buy 1 box of cartridges at the beginning of the season. Well, if you're going to go to all the trouble to go out in the field and hunt some of these fine game animals, you owe it to the animal as well as to yourself. Don't get 2 boxes. Go ahead and zero and shoot your gun with 1, and then save the rest of them for hunting. 1, it'll do a lot for your own self-respect. Let's say that you shoot at a deer that's 150 or 200 yards away and you miss him. Well, maybe it's not your fault. Maybe it's the fault that your gun was not properly zeroed. Maybe you had a loose scope mount. Who knows what? But you owe it to yourself now, for your own self-respect, your own hunting ability and shooting ability, to go out here and shoot some and literally get to know, become familiarized again with your gun. Shooting is not like swimming or riding a bicycle. They say, well, once you know how, you can do it from then on. Well, you can certainly make the gun go off, but all of us need a little training in marksmanship. That's why we call it marksmanship, because you do have to do it some to retain proficiency. And this is so important. For a handgun, typically, if you shoot maybe 50 or 100 rounds a month, you can retain your proficiency pretty well. But you need to do it. You need to go shoot a couple of boxes of shells at least once a month. I'm aware of some police departments that have qualified once a year or maybe twice a year, and that's the only time those officers shoot their guns. And when they come to a firefight, they miss most of their shots. They don't understand what happens when the magazine slide locks back. They get all nervous because they haven't done it. Friends, you know what? In a bind, you will do what you're trained to do. And all of us need to do just a little training, be it handgun or rifle or whatever. You also ought to practice shooting rapidly, working that bolt kind of fast, taking follow-up shots quickly. You need to practice offhand. Another thing that's important to do, you need to practice shooting off, say if you're right-handed, you ought to know what your gun does shooting off your left shoulder. You ought to know how to do it, because something might happen. You might have a tree or something where you would have to shoot from the left side. I don't know why, but trust me on this one, you will eventually need it. So we ought to try shooting from both sides, our right side and our left side. So just like we shoot a handgun, you always ought to know how to shoot your handgun left-handed. If in fact you're right-handed, you need to be able to do it with your other hand in case you're injured or something and you're having to defend your life. If you're left-handed, you certainly ought to practice some right-handed. Again, that's something that we really need to do. All right, well, we're about set, and you can see we have, yes, we do live on a farm, and yes, we do have animals, puppies and cats and whatever else, so but we're going to be real careful not to let them get in the line of fire. So let's go ahead and let's adjust our scope. Now what we're going to do, we're going to take our little caps off our scope. Now you see, friends, underneath these little caps here, and these are to protect our adjustments. We have an adjustment on the side and on the top. The top is for elevation. The side adjustment here is for windage. So we can take our screwdriver and each click of the adjustment there, and you have little marks that are plainly marked here, you can see. Each one of these clicks is a 1/4 of an inch adjustment at 100 yards. So at 200 yards it would be a 1/2 inch, and so on and so forth there. But this is how we adjust it. So we'll just take our caps off here, and lay them aside here on our bench rest. Or in fact, this qualifies more as a stand, I suppose, but it does work real well. All right, at turning, we can see here our targets are down at the bottom of the hill there, and that is, in fact, we moved them back a little bit. We normally shoot at 90 yards. Today we're shooting at 100. All right, friends, we're going to get some cartridges out, and the Federals come in these neat little holders here. That is somewhat thoughtful of them there, if you ask me. Okay, we're going to load some shells into our magazine here. Well, if I can get them in the right place there. Now, simply done. Now, Kitty, no, this is not my original Tomcat that used to, now, Kitty, when this gun goes off, I believe I better move the cat. No, you're not going to like it there. No, you got to get out. All right, come here. Now, the cat won't see the humor in this at all when we get started. All right, friends, we've got our gun loaded with several rounds. And let's go ahead and sight on the center of our target and see what it looks like. Again, shooting glasses, my goodness, we don't ever shoot one without shooting glasses. It's so important when we're here on the range, we're testing ammunition, because if we had a shell or something blow out, which you never know, it's possible, you always want to protect your eyesight. I mean, it's something that is so important. We never shoot without some sort of eye protection. So let's see what we're doing here. And we're sighted on in the center of the target. Let's see how close we are now. All right, now then, here's where you need your spotting scope. Those holes out at 100 yards are small. So this is why we need a spotting scope to see, in fact, just where we shot.
We went ahead and adjusted our scope, and we shot a couple of groups with our rifle. So let's see how it turned out.
And then, friends, we walked down and got our target. And what we're going to do, we're going to take a caliper here. And if you really want to know what your gun's doing, this was the 165 grain bullet right here. And we're going to measure from the center of the two holes that are furthest apart. And you can do this, it's not as hard as it sounds. If you're not used to doing this, you can get it real close, because your eye has a natural tendency to center these things when you look into a circle there. At least we're going to say that. Okay, that is, how about 1.05 inches. So for a 165 grain bullet, yes, in fact, 1.05 inches. Let's go ahead and write that down, which is, I think, a real good for an over-the-counter gun. Of course, no telling, we don't know who owned the gun, don't know how much it's been shot or whatever else. 1.05. So I think that is just excellent performance for a factory load. You know, you can work with one of these guns and develop a load that it likes. There's no telling what it'll do. You can bed the stock, you can put a synthetic stock, no telling what they'll do. All right, and this other group here, let's get it just right. Okay, is 1 point. My goodness. How about 1.2 inches? Again, really good performance for factory ammunition. 1.2 inches. And this was the 165 drain. This is a 180.
The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station.
You know, I've been using this old-fashioned coffee pot for more years than I care to remember. Truth is, sometimes you just can't improve on the original. Hi, I'm Grits Gresham, but adding a good scope to your favorite hunting rifle is one improvement that's a big plus in my book. Sure, choosing the right scope and having it mounted properly isn't as easy as flipping a flapjack. Be sure you get the job done right. See the real pro in your community.
Friends, I'll tell you what, if you're looking for an accurate big game rifle, certainly, as we said earlier, you can shoot anything from moose to mouse with a 30-06. This Remington 700 is really a very, very fine choice. There are some other good guns out there, but the Remington action is very smooth. Of course, the bolt is engine turned. They work extremely smooth. Of course, it cocks on opening. And to remove the bolt, we didn't say this earlier, for cleaning, and of course you want to clean these guns from the breech end of the barrel to prevent any wear on your barrel crown there. All you have to do, you have a little piece right in front of the trigger, just push it up, and of course you can take your bolt out, just as simple as can be for cleaning. Now the Remingtons do have adjustable triggers. We do not recommend doing this if you don't know what you're doing. Don't try this at home without certainly some experience. Take it to your gunsmith or to a gunsmith, certainly who has a good reputation, and tell him what sort of trigger weight you want. I tell you what, friends, these are such fine rifles, and again, we need to get out and sight them in properly with the bullet weight, the brand of bullet that we're going to use, and find out what the gun is really going to do in the field. So as we had talked about on an earlier show when we had George shooting out of a deer stand, up a tree with his bow and arrow, that again is not a bad idea to get up in your stand before the season starts and take a few shots at targets out there. You know, it's a little different shooting offhand than it is from a bench rest. So we all ought to practice some offhand shooting. Just because we can hit something off these sandbags does not necessarily mean that we can stand up here and hit what we're shooting at. So we darn sure need to take some practice like offhand and find out what our gun's going to do. But for today, the great 700 model Remington, or model 700, and 30-06 Springfield.
Hello, I'm Larry Pratt, Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. I want you to have an opportunity to see exactly what we're talking about with various kinds of firearms that are presently under discussion, firearms that are supposedly so powerful that no law-abiding American should own them. Firearms that should be banned by the United States Congress, or should they? Well, in order to discuss that, We have here Neil Knox, who is Executive Director of Firearms Coalition. Mr. Knox has been editor of 2 technical firearms journals in the past. He's a qualified court expert who has testified in numerous occasions on firearms, and he is also a past national champion for bench rest competitive shooting. So at this time, I would like to give you Neil Knox.
I've got the longest magazine that they normally make for this gun, a 30-round magazine, just to show you how ugly it makes the gun. It's a military gun. It's not made for pretty. But the cartridge it shoots, which the Louisville Courier said the other day would blow a deer to smithereens, this is the little cartridge we're talking about. Now, that's no plaything. This is a powerful cartridge, but we're talking relative here. And let's see what this one will do, and then we'll show you what these other guns will do. Now we'll take a look at see what the 7.6239 will do in the on a watermelon. No question, that's pretty nasty. I certainly wouldn't want to be hit with it, but let's take a look and see what some of these other guns will do. We haven't tried this before, but we want to see what this will do. This is the Model 100 in .243 Winchester. It's the kind of load that I shot my first deer with. You see what I meant? There is no comparison to the relative power of this cartridge, the Model 100 in .243 Winchester, and the AK-47 in standard 7.6239 military full patch jacketed ammunition. Here's a gun that almost everyone has seen or at least heard about or read about. This is a Model 1894 Winchester 30-30. It's a cartridge that is about 20% more powerful than the AK-47 round 7.6239. Again, here's a deer cartridge, the most popular one in the country. We'll see what it does. Now, part of the difference is the bullet. These are hunting bullets, soft point hunting bullets, as opposed to full patch military style. But military style bullets were what were used by Patrick Purdy and used by Joseph Westbecker in Louisville. We heard how terribly powerful the gun was. You just saw that this most popular deer cartridge in the country is far more deadly. By today's standards, the Model 94 Winchester is about the low end of the big game rifle power scale. It's about 20% more than that 7.6239. But you're right, it doesn't have a big long extension magazine. What it has is this little narrow tube, and it carries its extra ammunition here. Bear in mind, this is a 95-year-old style. This particular gun's not quite that old. I'll show you what it will do, although I'm not an expert with the lever action like old Chuck Connors is. Folks, that's a mighty potent weapon. The key is not the gun. The key is what the person who has that gun wants to do with that gun. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most common of all the big game rifles in the country. It's not quite as popular as deer's, the 30-30, but this is the 30-06, the model of 1906. Now, this is the AK-47 round, and this is the round for the 30-06. You can tell I didn't palm that. This same cartridge I had. You can tell the difference in what this does. Take a look at the watermelon. Does anyone really believe that the AK-47 7.6239 is more powerful than a common hunting round? You've heard about this MAC-10. It's a nasty-looking gun. It's caliber 9mm Luger, which has been around since about 1904. This gun, because of the extension magazine on it, will shoot 30 rounds without reloading. Ugly gun, but it shoots exactly the same cartridge that this gun does. Real pretty, Browning high power, been around since 1935. It shoots the same 9mm cartridge, has exactly the same power. Now, I can show you, well, I'll shoot the MAC-10. It's harder to control by far than this gun is, but I'll show you what it does on the watermelons. They talk about how many shots you can get off with that MAC-10, 30 shots. I showed you this little Browning. The Browning is 14 shots. You drop a magazine out and you shove another magazine into it, and you've got another round going. You've got the rest of those 30 shots. This is a 12-gauge Browning Automatic 5. It's a semi-automatic 5-shot, just like the name implies. This shotgun shell here is a number 4. It's duck load, very commonly used in hunting. Let's see what it does on the watermelon. We didn't fake that. There was no grenade inside that watermelon. The Russians in 1947 or thereabouts designed the 7.6239 to wound a 170-pound man. This cartridge, the 30-06 or the 300 Weatherby, is designed to kill a deer or a moose that weighs 300 or 1,000 pounds. That is the difference in power. The real power is in the guns that we use for hunting. Am I saying that American citizens shouldn't have hunting guns? Of course not. But what I'm saying is that you have been lied to about the power of these guns. We've seen today what the true effect is of the different cartridges on a similar target. Think about it when they tell you on the tube how terrible this 7.6239 is.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, now you've seen it. Let's have an instant replay of a few of the things that we've just taken a look at. First, we have the MAC-1011 firing a standard 9mm bullet. Next, we have the AK-47S using a standard military round, a 7.6239. And finally, we have a 12-gauge skeet shotgun. Let's see that again.
This video was brought to you courtesy of Gun Owners of America, Area 703-321-8585. The Shootin' Show will be right back after this break for your local cable company or TV station. friends, if you like military information from all over the world, or you just enjoy reading some darn fine adventure stories, you ought to take a look at Soldier of Fortune magazine. We're so pleased to be working with them. For subscription information, call them at 800-877-5207. Again, that number, 800-877-5207.
Friends, you know what? I enjoy this AR-15 type gun, and it's called a Colt Sporter today because you're not politically correct if you call it an AR-15, but in fact that's what it is. There's nothing wrong with you and I as honest citizens owning a semi-automatic gun like this. It is provided for in our Constitution. Well, the problem is, and in fact, no, this is not a weapon of mass destruction. This is in fact a varmint cartridge, the 223 Remington, which also happens to be a pretty good military cartridge within its range limitations. The gun looks probably more Spartan than some of the hunting guns, as we saw a few minutes ago in that piece that Neil Knox was talking about. Our hunting guns are far, far more powerful than these military-type guns. So what does that mean? Well, there's nothing wrong with us having these guns because you know what? When they succeed in taking this gun away, they're going to come after the hunting guns because the hunting guns, in fact, are much, much more powerful than the military-type guns. The 9mm is no comparison to this Ruger Super Blackhawk and 44 Magnum. The 9 is a pop gun compared to this 44 Magnum. So once they succeed in getting the military calibers or the 9mm, for that matter, away from us as honest citizens, then they're going for the other things. This Colt 1911, this gun has been around, in fact, in 45 ACP since before 1911. It's outrageous that suddenly we're not responsible enough as Americans, as citizens, we're not responsible enough to own these guns. Well, wait a minute. The next thing they're going to say is we're not responsible enough to vote. Now, friends, we don't want it to come to that. The Second Amendment is, in fact, what keeps the other of the amendments in the Bill of Rights, what keeps them in place. Now, friends, trust me on this one. When we lose our right to own, to keep and bear arms, our freedom is gone. Now, you can call America something else because it will be something else. It will not be the home of the free, land of the free, home of the brave. It won't be that anymore. It's going to be a land of something else. And, you know, in Russia, they used to call it slavery. We used to call them, in Russia and the communist country, slavery. Well, you know what, friends? If we lose our rights to keep and bear arms, we're in a whole heap of trouble. Now, we're going to do something about it, and you can help. You can join the Shootin' Show Gun Club, and of course our address is 554 Kings Highway, Shreveport, Louisiana. Our zip code 71104. You can call at 800-895-7916. We do take Visa and MasterCard. Incidentally, on that 800 number, you can also order the Bullet Express, our mail order catalog. You can also find out about information in the black box. So friends, we need you for $25 annual membership. And of course, we'll send you a set of our aims and goals for the gun club. You can also buy from the products in the Bullet Express, excluding the black box products, at our cost, our wholesale cost, plus 10% plus shipping and handling. Friends, we need you because Kurt and I are going to be going out around the country working with different organizations, different gun clubs around the country. We're going to get people to get their firearms. Let's go down to the range. Let's have a safe, fun gun day, and let's show them how they work. Let's show these women how they, in fact, can protect themselves. Because, friends, let me tell you, we don't have a lot of time. I mean, there's no time to waste at all. Some of these rules and regulations that are coming up in the Congress, and of course we do not have a friend in the White House, forget that. Our hope is, at this point, is to call our representatives, call our congressmen, call our senators, and tell them how we feel. And we're so happy now we're on 5 times a week. We want to welcome all the viewers that the Outdoor Channel is bringing us. We're so glad to have you folks here with us. We do have a great project, friends. This is work that's too important to not be done. So join today, the Shootin' Show Gun Club, 800-895-7916. We need you. Let's do it.
Now, friends, we get a lot of mail, a lot of requests for cleaning information. So many people that are now buying guns that don't know a lot about them, and cleaning and gun care is so important. So today we have a feature from Myrna from the RB17 company, and of course you can buy the RB17 products through the Bullet Express, or you can find them in your local gun shop. So she's going to show us how to blue a gun right now.
The product is called RB17. It takes the rust off the gun barrel without harming the bluing. What we're going to be doing for you here is a cleaning demonstration and then a bluing demonstration. You start first with RB17, which is your cleaner degreaser. It will remove the rust off of the gun barrel without harming the bluing. You put the cleaner on 4/0 steel wool. The RB17 is 17% Teflon, and the Teflon is what protects the bluing from the steel wool, so don't be afraid to scrub the metal. What you're doing here is removing the rust, the grease, and the gun oil, but because the cleaner is 17% Teflon, the Teflon is what protects the bluing from the steel wool. So scrub it, then wipe it off. Remember, RB17 is a cleaner, it's not a preservative. Make sure that you oil your firearm when you get done cleaning it. RB17 will not protect it. The finishing oil is a dry silicone lubricant. It will go back into the pores of the metal that we just cleaned, and it will preserve the metal with a dry silicone oil. Wipe it on, it goes into the pores. If there is any oxidation left that the cleaner loosened, the oil will displace it. Make sure that you wipe the residue of the oil off because you don't want to leave it oily. The oil goes into the metal and it leaves it looking wet when it is actually dry. We're going to do some bluing here. On this side of the firearm, we have some bluing missing. The first thing that you do is you clean the firearm with RB17. You want to remove any rust, grease, gun oil, or whatever has caused this bluing to go away. You use 4/0 steel wool and RB17. Scrub it. Remember, what you're doing is cleaning the metal. The RB17 will not affect the finish, so scrub the metal. Get it as absolutely clean as possible with RB17. Wipe it off. Now, you cannot blue dirty metal and you can't blue coal, so what we're going to do here is warm up the metal. You can use a hairdryer, a heat gun, or you can set the metal out in the sun. Either way will work. What you want to do is simply get the metal warm. Now, once you heat the metal, what's going to happen is it's going to sweat on you. So you take your RB17 and your steel wool and you clean it a second time. This will degrease everything that you've pulled out of the pores. RB17 is your cleaner and your degreaser. The cleaner you get the metal with RB17, the better your bluing will take. It's not necessary to get the metal extremely hot. Between 140 and 180 degrees is usually sufficient. What you're trying to do is to remove the residue out of those pores. Now then, to apply your bluing, it is necessary to use toilet paper. The reason you use toilet paper is there is a preservative in the paper called formaldehyde that activates the bluing. If you try to use anything else, the bluing will not activate, it will not work. Put your bluing on toilet paper and wipe it on. Allow it to air dry. It'll take approximately 30 seconds. You'll see it haze over, and then quite simply do it again. It is not necessary to degrease the bluing. You cleaned it with RB17. The RB17 is your cleaner and your degreaser. You do not have to give this bluing a bath because you will find it sticks to itself. 3 coats. Every third coat, you take a piece of clean, dry steel wool, preferably 4/0, that's super fine. Brush the metal lightly. What that will do is break off any impurities in the metal. And now it's simply a matter of 3 coats and polish, 3 coats and polish until you get the metal as dark as you want it. You are in control of the bluing process. If you are dealing with bare metal, you're going to be looking at about 6 to 12 coats. If you're dealing with touch-up bluing, you're going to be looking at about somewhere between 3 and 6. That is simply a judgment call. Now, the last thing that you do when you get the metal as dark as you want it, and remember, the color that you get is what it will look like before it hazes over. The last thing you want to do is stop the bluing action, and you do that with your finishing oil. It's in all of the kits. The oil is your developer and your neutralizer. Put it on a rag or toilet paper. Wipe it on. Let it sit at the house for 30 minutes. Give the oil plenty of time to soak into the metal, stopping all of the bluing action and neutralizing it. Then come back and wipe the residue of the oil off, and you're done. There is no odor to this. It won't come off when you clean it, and it won't come off when you fire it. You have chemically prepared the metal to be blued.
Now, friends, we're looking at a couple of single-action revolvers here. The one in particular we're going to look at today is the little mini revolver from North American Arms. And you can see, in comparison to our Super Blackhawk, it is really a tiny gun. And of course, you can see the 22 long rifle as compared to the 44 Magnum cartridge. It's a drastic, shall we say, comparison. These are very well-made little guns. They're all stainless steel. We have been shooting one of these for several years now. Heck, the last one, or the first one I ever bought was probably, I suppose in the early 80s. But they're very functional. They are what we would call a limited purpose gun. This is not the gun I would choose to have as a first line defense. However, it would beat the heck out of throwing rocks if that's all I had. It is primarily a backup gun, a very close range, as our target here, very close range backup gun. Really, that's what it is. And a lot of police officers, security guards carry these little guns. They're not probably for the beginner. Someone who is new to shooting, new to owning guns, this would not be the very best choice for a first gun for them, because it is so small. And you know, friends, all the rules of safe gun handling still apply to this little mini revolver. Some people call them derringers. They're really not derringers. At least we normally think of a derringer as a single shot or a two shot, certainly in the Remington pattern, a small gun. This is a 5-shot 22 long rifle. Now, these guns are available in 22 short, 22 long rifle, and also 22 Magnum. And a couple of the models they have will interchange cylinders from the 22 long rifle to the 22 Magnum. All you have to do is change the cylinder. Well, let's take a look at it up a little closer.
Well, in fact, we've actually run out of time for this week's feature on the North American Arms little 22 revolver. What we're going to do on next week's program, we're going to go ahead and shoot it. We're going to show you how it operates. And these are really neat pieces of work. They're very fine little mechanical devices, and they really are durable, rugged little guns. So I think everyone will be interested in tuning in next week to let us finish the feature on the little 5-shot revolver. Now, friends, you know, all of us as shooting enthusiasts should be subscribing to Shotgun News, the trading post for anything that shoots. With literally thousands and thousands of firearms bargains, they have 3 big issues every month. Shotgun News, Post Office Box 669, Hastings, Nebraska. The zip code is 68902. Their phone number is area 402-463-4589. For MasterCard or Visa subscriptions only, call them at 1-800-345-6923. Again, MasterCard or Visa subscriptions only, 1-800-345-6923. Well, friends, we've run out of time again on this week's shooting show. Remember now, we're on 5 days a week, 4 days a week on the Outdoor Channel. The coordinates are F2, Channel 3. Also still our regular Thursday night broadcast. We're going to continue that too. So we hope you've enjoyed tonight's program as much as we have enjoyed bringing it to you. We need you in the Shooting Show Gun Club now. Till next week, see you on another Shooting Show.